For years, the Blind Monk has ruled the jungle in both professional, competitive, and casual play. No amount of nerfs, new champions, or meta changes could stop the terror that is Lee Sin. Runes. By and far, the most popular build is a standard attack damage page, attack damage marks, attack damage quints, armor seals, and magic resist glyphs. A slight tweak could be replacing 3 to 6 MR glyphs for cooldown reduction. The reason we don't take attack speed, like most junglers would, is because Lee Sin already has an attack speed steroid by nature. By building attack damage, we're able to maximize damage and clear speed. Masteries. An average jungler page is perfect as is. Max out on Strength of the Ages for that free HP, and Dangerous Game for the health resets, as it were. A more aggressive page could max out on Thunderlord's Decree for extra burst damage during early ganks, but that's a bit more advanced. Level up path. Always start and max Q first. This is your bread and butter skill. This is what makes Lee Sin. What you go for next is completely up to each player's preference. For example, I played a bit more on the safe side, so I'll take in max W second. This gives better shields and HP sustain to stay healthy while farming the jungle. However, more aggressive players will take in max E second because of the increased damage and slowing power. In that sense, it breaks down to W second is passive, E second is aggro. Of course, take a max R whenever possible. Items. Alright, so everybody and their mother has their own personal Lee Sin build that they swear by. I'm going to recommend one of two builds. A beginner more defensive build and a more advanced offensive build. The former is focused on staying alive and utility, more or less to learn the champion and macro game as a whole. The latter is focused on applying heavy map pressure through pushing lanes and assassinating targets, albeit it's a bit more difficult to pull off. The general game plan. Start with your duo lane and do a standard double buff clear and look to gank immediately. If all lanes are pushing, keep in mind a counter gank while you hard farm until level 6. If you can swing counter jungling, then do it, but it is hard to do in solo queue since you don't have your team to help you. It's not worth it if you get caught out and put your team behind. Keep in mind Lee Sin is a control jungler and not necessarily a duelist, meaning he uses his mobility to visit lanes often and generally gets a lot of deep warding down. He can duel a lot of junglers fairly well, but champions like Udyr or Kindred will wreck him even if you're ahead. Even if you can't get kills or even summoner spells, keep ganking in between farming the jungle. With his mobility and high level of base damage, every Lee Sin should be able to do at least a little something from each visit. Don't underestimate the non-measurable effect of lane pressure. A really good example of this is watching the duo queue between a pro jungler and a member of his team, usually the mid laner. That jungler will camp his teammates' lane constantly just to get them ahead, even if it means that that jungler falls behind. He does this because Lee Sin doesn't need items to scale into the late game. He falls back onto the massive utility of his abilities. If your lane visit can mean your teammates' rise gets even a little bit of relief against that bloodthirsty Riven, then it's worth it. A quick recap. Standard double buff clear. Gank at level 3. Play control by getting scuttle crabs and deep warding. Hit 6, make a kill happen. Snowball lanes as much as possible in the early to mid game, even if you fall behind. Peel for your carries in the late game. Combos. These are some of the most popular and useful combination of spells Lee Sin can use. The spell rotation. It's the auto attack, spell, auto attack, spell, auto attack, repeat. We auto attack first before spell because our passive will speed up the time until the next auto attack. Therefore, we get to get in some extra damage. Effectively, you should always have the 40% attack speed going. It's not life or death to do it in team fights, but every single jungle camp should be done this way because it's the correct way. The first spell rotation should typically be the shield into life gen, then into whichever ability is desired next. E is good for multiple monsters, whereas Q is better for single targets. Spell rotation is absolutely vital. Just for getting through the jungle, you have to learn this immediately. Ward jump. Press the hotkey for the ward, immediately W to it. Generally, you want to keep both of those abilities on quick cast for faster jumps. Ward jumping effectively allows you to have a flash on a very short cooldown, in addition to being the basis for many of the other combos. Similar to spell rotation, you have to be able to learn this. If you're unable to do it for whatever reason, you really should not play Lee Sin. The engagement combo. It's Q, follow Q, immediately E into the slowing E. This does a nice amount of damage in addition to slowing the enemy so you can follow up with auto attacks to refill your energy bar. Ward jump as needed, whether that to be to catch up initially to save that Q to make sure it hits, or to follow up after the enemy gets away. The Dragon's Resonating Strike. This can be done in one of two ways. The first is to kick, then follow up with a Q in the exact same direction and follow. The second is to Q first, then kick, and then follow. The reason why the second Q is always last is because it deals increased damage based on how low your opponent is. So front loading as much of the damage as you can, notably with your Dragon's Rage, increases the overall damage done. Of course, the Insect. It combines engagement and the ward jump to get behind an enemy and kick them wherever desired. Keep in mind the kick is directly in front of your character model. You can't just point it in any old direction and hope for the best. Line up the shot for a moment after the ward jump if needed. The Flash Kick. Similar to the Insect. Kick, then a flash immediately after. This makes the enemy be kicked instantly behind you. This is a very sick looking move that can really come in handy. For example, if you don't want the opponent to get a chance to react, or if you're out of wards to jump to. That's pretty much all the main combos. Practice them until you can do them perfectly. Go into a bot game if necessary. So that's Lee Sin. He's like the most powerful jungler you could possibly learn. He can go across so many different situations and team comps. If you're a jungler maid, you should absolutely learn Lee Sin because he is spectacular.